without further ado, Mr. Ron Seale, and I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us about his background and the things that he does. Ron?
Thank you, Jack. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I've been in Birmingham about 2 weeks to go to law school here. I really wasn't even sure how to get from my apartment, which was in Vestavia, down to Samford and back. And they had like a rush party or get acquainted party from, it may have been one of the legal fraternities, somewhere on the other side of campus, and I went with one of my newfound friends. They served Jack Daniels at that party. Toward the end of the evening, Ted was of the opinion that someone had stolen the car. The fact of the matter was we just couldn't find the car. We didn't know where the car was. So I remember walking down Lakeview Drive. We had decided, well, we'll just walk home and we'll attend to the car the next day. Not me, you understand, but my co-student was carrying in his hand some of the liquid refreshment that we had left the school with. And a Homewood police car came by, and we saw his brake lights go on, and my friend, you notice I'm not calling his name, he's a district judge now, but when the brake lights went on, my unnamed friend threw that bottle down in the ditch. This was some of the earliest experiences I had with learning criminal procedure as a and the car backed up, and you know how that goes. Well, you folks probably don't, because I can tell you're a fine, upstanding audience, but they got this flashlight they put over their shoulder, and the radio's going off on the, and he said, "What did you throw in the ditch?" And we said, "We didn't throw anything in the ditch." He said, "Well, I'm going to go down there, and if I find anything in the ditch, then we'll," and of course, it took him about 3 seconds. And he put us in the back of the car, and I thought, oh man, I've come up here, I've got in this law school, I have the shortest legal career of anyone that's ever been in a law school. Turned out the police officer was working part-time at Homewood, and he was also a member of our freshman class. And he helped us find the car, and we left the car and went home. That was one of my earlier introductions to being in Birmingham, and a rather tenuous start to my legal career. I want to thank y'all for having me back. It is really, really good to be here. Jack Hood is a very, very good and close friend of mine, and when Jack asked me to be here, I certainly relish the opportunity to come. And folks, I'm not insensitive to the fact that you folks have worked all day, and you've had a full day, and you're ready to come to an evening meeting and go home. So I am not going to presume upon your time and to keep you here beyond what I would hope good common sense would be. I really sort of accepted the invitation to come down here a little bit with trepidation, because I don't have really anything to offer you folks that you all haven't done. My stories of law practice are essentially the same stories as yours. My stories of being in law school are essentially the same stories as yours. The names may have changed, certainly the dates will have changed, but it's pretty much the same experiences that we have all had. Leaving here, I practiced law in Louisiana, primarily defense-oriented work for about 30 years, and after that I left and started working for the nonprofit arm of the Masonic fraternity, which I have done for about 15, 16 years, and I'm about a year out from retirement in doing that. So when Jack and I first talked about me coming down here, I said, Jack, I don't really know what I would offer to those folks that they don't already know. And he said, well, maybe the thing you can do is remind them of some of the things that they already know. And maybe a little bit in my story, you will again see some of your story and the story that some of you are still writing. It is an immense honor for me to have Dean Strickland here. Well, I think we met Dean for the first time yesterday, and he was so gracious and gave us a tour of the school. It's changed a lot since I've been there in some respects as far as the buildings and whatnot. But as we stopped and like peeked through the pane of glass in a classroom where there were some law students desperately trying to understand what the professor was saying, it ain't changed that much. It's the same thing. But I had a great experience here. And I thought a lot of those men and women on the faculty of that law school. Some of the names you will remember, some of the names you may have seen written, some of the names you won't know at all. But we talked earlier tonight, certainly Frank Donaldson and Ray Hutchins and Arthur Weeks and Bob Riggert and Annette Dodd, Janie Shores, Mr. Cole, Mr. Starnes, all of these people. I owed still do, a great debt of gratitude to those people. I had the chance today to go see Dean Frank Donaldson, 97 years old. And I told him today I was about 40 years late in coming to see him to thank him for what he did for me. At the time, I was scared to death of him. But he, along with all of these other people, and I would submit to you what Dean Strickland and his faculty are doing now. Sure, they taught me law, but more importantly than that, they taught me how to think and how to analyze things and how to reason about things. Many of us remember being in law school. To me, it's a whole different discipline that we go through undergraduate school and we're trying to memorize facts, and we go to law school and we're trying to recognize issues of when a conflict comes. What are the issues here? What is presented to the court for decision? How do I identify in this factual situation really what the legal principles at stake are? And for many of us, and certainly for me, I had a political science background. We didn't think that way, so it was a completely new process here. And those folks helped teach me something like that. I think they also taught me, or at least reaffirmed, something of character, of honesty, of integrity that goes with our profession. I learned that a reputation could take years to build and a second to lose. And once lost, perhaps never again could be regained. The honor of being able to go into court and represent a litigant, the words that we have all said 10 jillion times in dictating pleadings, from whatever state you're from, now into court through undersigned counsel comes whoever, just the honor of being able to do that and to stand before the bar of justice and present the case or the side or argue the plea of somebody that is depending upon you is a tremendous responsibility. And when I left here, I'm not sure I really realized the depth of what had been given to me just over the hill there under Vulcan by those very special people. Our bar was small in Baton Rouge at that time. And that meant that a lot of the people that we saw today as opposing counsel, we would see again. Our cases were stringently fought and arduously argued, but it was never personal, because at some point in time, we still could recall that this was a argument or a dispute between the parties and not between the lawyers. And that today, perhaps, you were victorious, but guess what? We each had 3 or 4 files on our desk, that tomorrow it may be my turn. So it was not in the sense of take no prisoners kind of litigation. And that's what Jack was talking about earlier with the sense of civility in many ways that has been lost. Sure, they taught ethics, and now we have to learn professionalism. One of my colleagues in Louisiana, Jim George, a very well-known attorney in our area, speaking at another ends of court, said that ethics is something that is required. Professionalism is something that is expected. So in that sense, with a brand new diploma and a brand new license, I forged into the world of litigation. A top-notch, crack trial lawyer. Gulf Insurance versus Virgil's Auto Sales. I lost. It was a subrogation action. And at that time in Baton Rouge, the courthouse was being remodeled. So they had this deal that the courts were in an old junior high school building, but the clerk of court was still functioning. So if you were going to try a case, you had to go to the clerk's office and check out the suit record and bring it to the court. Well, we did that. Since it was my very first case, they decided, well, we might better send somebody with Ronnie, a little more experience in the bar. So they sent a good friend. He was my senior for about 5 months, which means to tell you that neither one of us know what we were doing. But we went over to the courthouse and we checked out the suit record, just like you're supposed to do. And we got over there and we started the case, and it was about somebody that had gotten in a car and had driven off of a used car lot, and we were trying to prove agency, some kind of relationship to hold these people liable. But no one told us when you checked out the suit record, you also had to go down to the evidence room and to check out this big folder that held the documentary exhibits. We didn't have any of that. So the case come in, the judge took the bench, and we fell off into the trial, and we realized that we didn't have any of the evidentiary exhibits that we needed. Now, some of y'all don't remember this. I'm not going to point out which ones of you don't, but they used to have a little car that was an MG car, a little sports car, which I had one of those cars. And this thing had a standard transmission on it. So our plan was, well, I was going to keep on with the trial, and my law partner was going to get in this car and make a beeline back over there to get the evidentiary folder and bring the thing back. That should have taken probably about, since we were both scared and trying not to throw up, it should have taken about 10 minutes. 10 minutes came and went, 15 came and went, 20 came and went. And I had the witness on the witness stand. Sir, would you please state your name and address for the record? Well, I thought I might ought to lay a proper foundation to do that. Sir, are you in a position to know whether or not you have a name? Well, yes. Do you in fact have a name? Yes. Would you state your name for the record? Yes. Now, do you have any documentary evidence on you to establish that this is in effect your name? Looking at my watch all the time, going through. And finally, the judge, who I had known for years, called me up to the bench, and of course, you know, about sidebar conferences, opposing counsel got up, and he told the opposing, no, you just sit down. And he said, what are you doing? I said, well, Chuck went over to get the evidentiary exhibits. He said, I have a suggestion. Why don't you ask for a recess until he gets back? But everybody in this courtroom knows that that man has a name. So I said, Your Honor, could we have a moment or two recess? Granted. Well, Chuck eventually came back in huffing and puffing, and I've known him since junior high school. He is the godparents of my children. I said, where have you been? Geez, did you drive from Baton Rouge to New Orleans? What are you doing? He couldn't drive a car with his standard shift. So there I was dying in a courtroom, and he could never get the car out of first gear. So he was going at about 5 miles an hour all the way over there and back. Dean, I want to tell you, you folks did a better job teaching me trial procedure than that. But it was just awful. So we decided, well, maybe my foray wasn't going to be in that kind of litigation. Maybe I ought to turn to the criminal courts. The case of Nugene, well, I'm not going to tell you his last name, but you would know in Baton Rouge, his real name was Nugene. In Baton Rouge, Interstate 10 goes through Baton Rouge and crosses the Mississippi River west. Well, they have a spur off of that, which is Interstate 110. And about that time, the highway department was building Interstate 110. Well, Nugene came roaring up Interstate 10 in his about 15-year-old car and decided that he wanted to continue on north. And the fact that the road was closed and it had a sign up there saying that it had just been cemented and don't go up there was not a barrier to Nugene. And he got out of his car and he took the thing and moved it and got back in his car with his super turbocharged V8 engine and gunned the thing and went forward and sunk it all the way down to the chassis up in the newly configured road. We spent all Thanksgiving Day trying to get Nugene out of jail. I learned that when you do something like that, wasn't anybody really interested in letting Nugene out of jail. But we finally found a sympathetic judge that I think had more sympathy on us as the attorneys, and he let him go. Well, about 2 or 3 days later, speaking with the district attorney's office, be someone about like Jack in the U.S. attorney's office, but this was the district attorney's office, I called and said, we're representing Eugene, and he said, well, let me get the file. So he got the file and he looked through it and he says, yep, I've got it here. He says, we've got him on an aggravated ALF. I said, oh, that's good. I said, it's just bad that he's on an ALF, but, and I said, I hate to ask you this. Because I did really good over here over the hill in criminal law, but I'd never heard of an ALF. I didn't know what that was, but it was aggravated. It meant it had to be bad. I said, what is an ALF? And I didn't know, is it a felony? He said, ALF, acting like a fool. And eventually we managed somehow or another to get the charges reduced. The judge did point out during the bench conference that we probably just ought to take him out back and shoot him, but other than that, the last thing that I will tell you, as I started my great legal career in Baton Rouge, the same attorney that could not get the car out of first gear had a case that he got me to help him on, in which you've heard the old legal proverb that every dog has one bite. Same thing goes true for a horse. It's whether or not it has a free kick. As a matter of fact, in the civil code of Louisiana, there are particular vices of animals, like horses and mules, and one is whether or not it has vicious propensities. So the issue was whether or not at a gathering with a bunch of children, this horse had kicked somebody and was known to have done something like that. So we came up with a really bright idea that we'd bring the horse down to the courthouse. Y'all heard about how sometimes you're supposed to prep a witness for trial? It's really hard to prep a horse, you know, because, and we got the judge, everybody goes out to the court, out to the parking lot where we had the horse out there in the trailer. And this old horse was just the most docile looking sleepy thing, sort of standing there asleep with one foot up, like they do, and a tail swatting fly. So we had made the point, I thought, that the horse was docile, quiet. Whereupon my law partner, I don't know what happened to him, but I was hearing him say, almost like in a surreal kind of a thing, Your Honor, if it please the court, we'd like to offer, introduce, and file an evidence and mark as defense exhibit to this horse. At which point, the clerk of court just rose up in horror and said, wait a minute, who's going to take this thing and who is going to feed him? So after that, I'm sure I would hope that I made some more positive contributions to the legal community in Baton Rouge than that horse whose name is unknown and Eugene and Virgil's auto sales. I told Dean Strickland that I thought I had practiced for a number of years without ever embarrassing my law school. He may think different of that. But out of that, the crucible of those experiences, and many that you could name, your career takes shape, and a practitioner of law truly is born or is developed, hopefully to have a breadth of experience in the practice of law. My dad practiced law for 60 years before his death. And when he died, and we had a visitation at a funeral chapel in Baton Rouge, it was on a Friday night. And it was a stormy, bad night in Baton Rouge. And you think of all sort of things when you go through grief. But the thought that was in my mind was, there's not going to be anybody there. And I'm going to have my mom there. And we're going to be in this big old empty funeral home. And we got down there. And the people went down the chapel, around the hall, down the hall, and about a block from that funeral home, they were standing in the rain. Now, they were partners in the law firm, and they were contemporaries and colleagues in the other law firms in town, and a good representation of the judiciary, members of the bench were there. But as I was standing up greeting these people, it occurred to me that there were people coming through that line that I didn't have any idea who they were. And I was saying to myself, who are these people? But over and over and over again, people came up to me that I had never seen. And they told me at some point something as an attorney that he had done to help somebody who found themselves in a bad situation without their regard to the ability to pay or a billable hour or what they could do for him, but that he was in a position to do something as an attorney for the people with whom he came in contact. That's something I will never, ever forget. And there are people that I never saw again. But he was of the generation that he viewed what we did as a calling, as a profession, as a noble activity in which to be engaged. And I guess when I looked at that, I thought in my mind that I hope that that is the way that I can practice law. You remember the cases that you win. That's always great. But in my mind, I remember also the cases that I've lost. Maybe we should have lost. But any lawyer that practices law for any length of time will come to that point when he has to go sit on a bench in the hall outside the courtroom and explain to a client what happened. Not that it's your fault, but you have a feeling of empathy for the people that you're somehow bound up with in the course of litigation. I did that for about 30 years. I could go on and on about that, but the time is drawing nigh and you need to be on your way. Jack said, he asked me if I would say a few things about what I'm doing now. After about 30 years in Baton Rouge practicing law, I took a job working in Washington. Essentially, it's like the CEO of one of the national Masonic organizations. We have our headquarters about 8 blocks from the White House in Washington. And I've had a marvelous time doing that. You know, a lot of people, they ask you sometime, and I think it's probably our fault, but the Freemasons sometimes have promoted this mystery of, well, we're some kind of a secret organization. And you see these things on the History Channel, like, what are these people doing up in those buildings, you know, and they trying to take over the world, and what they're doing up in there. Most of the people that I run into are just trying to stay awake. Well, y'all got these secret things. Well, here's the big secret. There's not any secret. Anything you want to find out about any organization, you can find it in 5 minutes on the web. All of the rituals of the Masonic order deal with, metaphorically, where we read in the Bible that Solomon built a temple in which the Israelites believed God would live. Metaphorically, by the way we live, we seek to build a temple that we would hope that God would live in us. In whichever way, through whichever ceremony that you go through, that's what the story is over and over again amongst the Freemasons. Interestingly enough, as Jack has said, Many of these organizations have seen a decline in membership. Most recently, within our part of the Masonic organization, particularly with young men, we have found an increase in membership, that people are coming to an organization that deals with spirituality and ethics and philosophy, and they find a place of fraternity, belonging, and acceptance. We have two rules. We have two rules. At a Masonic meeting, you cannot go and talk about politics, and you cannot talk about religion. If you do, they will put you out. You talk about spirituality, but we don't talk about if the Catholics are right, or the Baptists are right, or the Jews are right. We don't talk about if the Republicans are right, or the Democrats are right. We don't talk about what do you think about Hillary, what do you think about Trump, because those are things that pull people apart. And what we focus on are things that bring people together. In that organization, I have had many wonderful experiences. I have been from seeing people truly in hovels south of Oaxaca, Mexico, to the deck of the nuclear aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan, CBN 76, meeting with members of the royal family in London, to being just about sundown outside of Dracula's castle in Transylvania in Romania, thinking I might better get out of here. I've had the chance to travel in and about the world